Nobody is coming to save you, but something inside you already can. E.W. Kenyon. You have checked the door 1,000 times waiting for someone to walk through it and rescue you. And that ache of waiting is exactly what E.W. Kenyon spent his life trying to heal in people. The scripture says it plainly in Luke chapter 17 verse 21. The kingdom of God is within you. And Jesus said those words not as poetry but as a location, a place already inside the listener, not a place still being built somewhere out ahead. And Kenyon would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? He is not telling you help is coming. He is telling you it already arrived and took up residence. The power is not scheduled for later. It is already housed in you now, waiting only to be recognized and used. And if you have spent years scanning the horizon for a rescuer, a circumstance, a person, a break that finally sets you free, you are not the only one. Most of us were taught to look outward first, and it left us starving right next to a well we never knew was already dug beneath our own feet. Say it with me. I am not waiting on rescue. I already carry what I need. It is already inside me. Again, I am not waiting on rescue. I already carry what I need. It is already inside me. If something in you just went quiet reading those words, type 2 words down in the comments. I'm ready. Let it be your seal. And if this kind of teaching is doing something in you, stay close and subscribe, so tomorrow's teaching finds you the same way this one did. The first law is this: the rescue you are waiting for already arrived, and it did not arrive from outside. Kenyon taught that the moment a person is born again, something is deposited in them immediately, not gradually, not on a delay, a recreated spirit, complete the instant it happens. So the help was never scheduled for some future Tuesday when circumstances finally cooperate. It was handed over already, in full, the day you were made new, and Kenyon was insistent on this point. He did not describe new birth as the planting of a small seed of potential that must slowly ripen into ability over years of effort. He described it as an instant recreation, a finished transaction, the way a light switches on the moment the current reaches it, not the way a sunrise slowly builds over an hour. Think of a man who spends his whole life waiting for his boss to finally notice him, for his wife to finally change first, for the economy to finally turn before he starts the business he has sketched on napkins for 10 years. He checks the mailbox every day for a letter that never comes. He checks the phone every hour for a call that never rings. And the whole time, the very courage he needs, the very clarity he needs, the very next step he needs, sits unused in the drawer of his own spirit like a tool still wrapped in its plastic, untouched since the day it arrived. It is not that help never comes. It is that you keep waiting on the wrong help, watching the door instead of checking the room you are already standing in. Picture a woman handed a set of keys on her wedding day to a house she has never seen. She keeps the keys in her pocket for years, driving past that house every single morning on her way to a cramped apartment, never once turning in. The house was never the problem. The recognition was, and this is exactly what Kenyon meant, the rescue was never going to walk in from the hallway. It was placed inside you the day you were made new, quietly, completely, without ceremony. Consider, too, the mother who paces the hospital waiting room, certain that peace will only come once the doctor finally walks through that door with good news. And meanwhile, a quieter strength has already been sitting inside her the whole time, unopened, because she was taught her whole life to expect help to walk in from somewhere else, from someone else, on someone else's schedule. And every single day you spend scanning the horizon for someone else to arrive is a day spent looking past what already belongs to you. It is not that you are still waiting to be equipped. It is that you were equipped the instant you were made new and have simply not yet turned around to look. The door you keep checking was never the one that mattered. The door already inside you was, I already hold what I keep waiting for. The second law is this. The reason you keep waiting on outside rescue is that you were trained since childhood to trust only what your senses report. Kenyon called this sense knowledge, the report of eyes, ears, hands, the bank balance, the doctor's face, the silence of a phone that has not rung, and he set against it what he called revelation knowledge, the report of what the Word says is already true, regardless of what the senses are announcing in that exact moment. And Kenyon would stop you right there and say, "Do you see the trap?" The senses were never dishonest. They were only ever partial, hired to report the surface and nothing underneath it. Picture a farmer standing at the edge of his field in the dead of January, snow packed hard over frozen dirt, not one green blade anywhere in sight. And if you handed that farmer a clipboard and asked him to report exactly what his eyes see, he would write down nothing. Bare ground, no life, no harvest coming, and by every visible measure he would be telling the truth. And yet, underneath that frozen crust, the seed he planted in autumn is already alive, already swelling, already carrying the entire harvest, folded inside it, waiting only for a season his eyes cannot yet perceive. The harvest was never absent, it was only unreported, because the senses simply do not have the equipment to detect a seed working in the dark. This is exactly what Kenyon meant. It is not that your eyes lie to you, it is that your eyes were never hired to tell you the whole truth, only the visible half of it. Think of walking into a tunnel and watching the bars vanish from your phone. The signal has not disappeared from the sky. The tower has not shut off. The network is still fully alive overhead. Only your receiver has lost the ability to detect it for a moment, and if you judged reality only by that blank little screen, you would swear the whole world had gone silent, when in truth, the world never stopped speaking. So when you make the five senses the only judge of what is real and what is possible, you have appointed a judge who is blind to half the courtroom. The ability inside you does not show up on that report, not because it is absent, but because the senses were never equipped to detect a seed still working underground. So the next time the account looks empty, the report looks final, the silence looks permanent. Remember the farmer standing over his frozen field. Remember the phone losing its bars inside the tunnel. The harvest and the signal were never gone, only unseen for a season. I trade what my eyes report for what is already true. The third law is this, and it is the deepest reason something inside you already can. Kenyon returned again and again to a single verse. 1 John chapter 4, verse 17. As he is, so are we in this world. And he taught that this was not a wish or a hope. It was a statement of shared identity. The ability you are looking for is not something you must generate out of your own limited willpower like a man trying to squeeze water from a dry stone. It is something you already share, patterned after a life that already overcame. And there are a few angles worth turning this over in, because it does not fully land the first time you hear it. First, consider what shared identity even means here. Kenyon was not saying you become identical to another person in every detail, the way twins share a face but are still two separate people, walking two separate days. What he was saying, you share the same kind of life, the same standing, the same nature. Think of a river fed from the ocean. The water moving through that river carries the very salt, the very current, the very character of the sea it came from. It is not a painting of the ocean hung on a wall somewhere far away. It is an actual continuation of it, simply moving now through a smaller channel. And this is why sitting around waiting to personally generate enough strength before you act is like a river waiting to invent its own salt, instead of simply recognizing the sea it has been flowing from all along. Second, consider the ordinary story of the small shop that opens under a large trusted franchise. The shop does not invent its own recipes from nothing, does not build its own supply chain from scratch, does not spend 10 years testing what already works. It draws directly on what the parent company already built, already tested, already proven under pressure long before this particular shop ever opened its doors. The shop's strength was never self-generated. It was granted through identification, through belonging to something already established. And Kenyon taught that this is exactly the relationship between the believer and the life described in that verse. Not an imitation attempted from a nervous distance, not a performance staged to look the part, but an actual shared nature reaching forward into the present tense of your actual Tuesday afternoon. Third, consider the quiet weight this lifts off of you. Because if the ability had to be self-generated, then every failure would be proof you simply do not have enough of whatever it takes, and that is the exhausting math most people are running underneath everything. But if the ability is instead shared, inherited, already patterned after a life that already overcame every kind of pressure this world can produce, then a hard morning is no longer a verdict on your worth. It is simply a moment you have not yet recognized what you are already joined to. Picture the heir of a family that already built something lasting. The heir does not have to reinvent the family's reputation from zero on their very first day. The reputation, the standing, the resources were already established before the heir ever walked into the room. The only work left for the heir is recognition and use, not invention from nothing. So when you feel too weak for the day ahead, the question was never whether you personally have enough raw willpower stored up somewhere inside you. The question is only whether you recognize what you were already joined to the day you were made new. It is not that you must become strong enough on your own. It is that you were never actually asked to generate the strength in the first place. You were only ever asked to recognize the strength already given. And once that recognition truly lands, the whole shape of your waiting changes, because you stop auditioning for a power you think you might not qualify for. And you start simply walking in what already belongs to you, what He is, I already am, in this world. The fourth law is this: having the ability inside you is not the same as releasing it. And Kenyon taught that the tongue is the valve. He called it confession, simply saying what is already true, rather than reciting what the senses currently report. And this is worth slowing down on, because most people treat their words as a running commentary on their circumstances, a kind of weather report, when Kenyon insisted the mouth was never meant to describe conditions, it was meant to govern them. Think of a furnace sitting in the basement of a house, fully installed, fully connected, fully capable of warming every room from floor to ceiling. And yet if the thermostat on the wall is set to nothing, if no one ever turns the dial, the furnace can sit there for years, generating exactly zero heat, not because it lacks power, but because nothing has authorized it to release what it already holds. Your words are that dial. Picture a woman getting ready for a job interview she is more than qualified for. She has the experience, the skill, the actual ability sitting fully formed inside her. And yet in the car on the way there she says out loud, "I'm probably not going to get this. They'll probably pick someone younger. I never win these things." And she says it lightly, almost like a joke, the way so many people do, not realizing the mouth does not distinguish between a joke and a decree. It simply keeps agreeing with whatever gets repeated most often, and by the time she walks in the door, her shoulders already carry the shape of someone who has been told no. before anyone in that room has said a single word to her. It is not that she lacked the ability, it is that her own mouth had already talked her out of using it. And this happens in smaller rooms too. At kitchen tables, in cars idling in driveways, in the quiet mutter under your breath when the bill arrives or the diagnosis lands, or the child slams the door again. The sentence you reach for first, "I can't handle this, I'm not ready, nothing ever works out for me," becomes the valve closing shut on exactly the ability that was already sitting there, waiting to be released. So today, when the old sentence rises up in your throat, the tired one, the defeated one, the one so familiar it barely feels like a choice anymore, you get to choose a different sentence, deliberately, out loud if you need to, one that actually matches what is already true about what is already inside you, not a slogan borrowed from somewhere else, but a plain, honest naming of what you already carry. My words agree with what I already have. Let the breath settle for just a moment here, because if this law just named something you recognized in yourself, subscribing costs you nothing and keeps the next teaching arriving right when you need it. That is the only ask. Now let's keep walking together into what comes next. The fifth law is this, and it is the one that changes everything once it settles. Because Kenyon made a distinction most people never hear in their whole lives, the difference between what he called legal rights and what he called vital rights. First, consider the legal right. The moment a person is born again, certain things become legally theirs, instantly, completely, the way a deed transfers ownership of a house the day the paperwork is signed. The house is now yours, fully. No argument, no waiting period, no probation, no committee that has to approve you first. And Kenyon taught that this is exactly how the ability inside you was granted. It did not arrive in installments. It did not arrive as a loan you must slowly earn back. It arrived whole, complete, the day it was given, notarized before you even understood what had happened. Second, consider why the legal right by itself is never enough. Because a deed sitting in a drawer does not warm anyone on a cold night, and a title with your name on it does not cook a single meal or open a single door. Picture inheriting a beautiful house from a relative you loved, fully furnished, fully paid for, every room already stocked with what you would ever need, and yet you never drive out to see it. You keep renting the same cramped apartment across town because it is familiar, because the landlord there at least recognizes your face. And years pass, the house sits out there in the quiet countryside, yours on paper, completely unused in practice. The furniture gathering dust, the pipes untouched, the pantry full and forgotten. And this is precisely what Kenyon meant when he distinguished the legal right from what he called the vital right. The vital right is not granted. It is taken, walked into, lived inside, appropriated through actual use and repeated exercise until it becomes as familiar as your own front door. So let's walk through an ordinary day and watch this happen in real time. Morning comes, and the ability to stay calm under pressure is legally yours, fully deeded, signed and sealed, and yet the phone rings with bad news at 8:15, and the old reaction fires first, the racing heart, the spiral of worry, the same tired script running on autopilot. Because the vital right was never exercised, by noon a decision needs to be made, and the wisdom to make it clearly is legally yours, sitting in that same inherited house, in a room with the lights already wired and waiting. But the day gets handed instead to anxious second-guessing, 3 phone calls to people who cannot actually help, an hour lost pacing the same worn path in the mind. Because nobody ever walked into that particular room and turned on the light. By evening, courage to have one honest conversation is legally yours too, and instead the conversation gets postponed again, the same way it was postponed last week and the week before that, filed away under someday, not because the ability was missing, but because it was never vitally claimed. Third, consider how the vital right actually gets taken, not through one dramatic grasp, not through a single lightning bolt moment of transformation, but through steady, ordinary use, the way a muscle only becomes strong through repeated lifting, not through owning a gym membership that hangs forgotten on the refrigerator door for a year. A man does not become a carpenter by owning a full set of tools. He becomes a carpenter by picking them up again and again until the hand knows the hammer without thinking. Fourth, consider the man who keeps a toolbox locked in the back of his truck for a decade, every tool inside it purchased, paid for, sitting in perfect condition, and yet every time something breaks at home, he calls someone else to fix it, pays a stranger for an afternoon of work he was fully equipped to do himself, not because the tools failed him, but because the toolbox never once got carried up the driveway and opened on his own porch. And slowly, a strange kind of quiet grief sets in, the grief of a man surrounded by his own unused capacity, and this is the exact grief Kenyon was trying to spare people from when he separated the legal from the vital, because owning something you never use does not feel like wealth after enough years. It starts to feel like a locked room you walk past every day without asking why the door stays shut. Fifth, consider how this compounds across an entire lifetime if it goes unaddressed, because it is never just one room left dark. It is dozens. The room marked patience, the room marked boldness, the room marked rest, the room marked forgiveness. Each one fully furnished the day you were made new, each one waiting behind its own particular door. And a person can walk the same 3 familiar hallways of their personality for 40 years, complaining that the house feels smaller than it should, never once trying the handles on the doors they assumed were merely decorative. Sixth, consider what this means for the specific ability sitting unused in you right now, because it has a name, a shape, a room in that house with your name already on the door. Maybe it is patience with a child who tests you daily. Maybe it is the boldness to ask for what you are actually worth. Maybe it is the quiet steadiness to sit with grief without running from it. Whatever it is, Kenyon would say it is not out there somewhere still being manufactured on your behalf. It is already deeded, already furnished, already waiting behind a door you have simply never turned the handle on. So pause for a moment and pick one real situation from this week where you have felt stuck. One actual moment, not a vague general feeling, but a specific hour with a specific ache in it. And ask yourself honestly, do I actually not have what I need here? Or have I simply never walked into the room where it is kept? Because Kenyon's whole teaching on this point comes down to a single sharp truth. It is not that you lack ownership, it is that you have never taken possession. And those are 2 entirely different problems requiring 2 entirely different remedies. One requires waiting for something to be given that was never withheld. The other requires simply standing up, walking down the hall and turning the handle. The deed has your name on it already, notarized, complete, undisputed, and the only remaining question, the only one that has ever mattered, is whether you will finally walk through the front door of that house you already own. I do not just own it, I live inside it. The 6th law is this, and it is the simplest one to carry with you, starting today. Kenyon taught that feelings were never meant to lead, they were meant to follow. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it in your own life. Most people wait to feel brave before they make the hard call. Wait to feel confident before they walk into the room. Wait to feel peaceful before they finally rest. And the waiting stretches on for years because the feeling they are waiting for only ever shows up after the step is taken, not before. Think of stepping into cold water at the edge of a lake. Nobody feels warm standing on the shore staring at it. The warmth, such as it is, only comes after the first step is already taken into the water. It is not that the feeling comes first and then you act. It is that you act and the feeling arrives afterward to keep you company. So let's walk through this the way it actually plays out for someone. A man sits in his car in the driveway before walking into a house where a hard conversation is waiting. He tells himself he will go in once he feels ready, once the nervous knot in his stomach settles. So once his hands stop feeling heavy on the wheel, and so he sits there for 20 minutes, scrolling his phone, waiting for a feeling that was never going to arrive first, because the feeling was always going to be produced by the walking, not by the waiting. If he had simply opened the door and walked up the driveway, the calm he was hunting for would have met him halfway. Not before the first step, but somewhere inside the second or third. This is exactly what Kenyon meant when he taught that the senses report what already exists, but never what you are about to create. Your nervous stomach is an honest report of where you are standing right now. It is not a reliable forecast of where you will be standing 3 minutes from now, once you have already moved. So notice where in your own week you are waiting for permission from a feeling that only shows up after obedience. The confidence to send the message, the calm to make the call, the peace to finally rest. None of it arrives on the front porch. All of it arrives once you are already inside the room. So this week, whatever the smallest honest action is, the phone call, the appointment, the sentence you have been swallowing for months, take it before the feeling shows up, because it was never going to show up first. It is not that you are missing courage, it is that you keep asking courage to go ahead of you when it was only ever built to walk beside you, once you have already started moving. I move first, and the feeling follows me. Here is the whole picture. It is not that help was withheld, it is that help was already given and simply unrecognized. It is not that your eyes were lying, it is that your eyes were never equipped to see it. It is not that you needed to become strong on your own, it is that the strength was already shared with you the day you were made new. It is not enough to hold something, the mouth has to agree with it before it moves. It is not that you lack ownership of the house, it is that you have never walked through its front door. And it is not that the feeling must come first, it is that action always leads and feeling only ever follows behind. 6 laws, and really just one recognition wearing 6 different faces. Nobody was ever coming from outside, because something was already placed inside on the day you were made new. Complete, whole, waiting only to be seen. And however long you have spent standing at that window watching the road for someone to arrive, Kenyon would say gently, "Stop watching the road. Turn around. The house behind you already has the lights wired in. You only have to find the switch. Whatever hour of your life this finds you in, it is not too late. The deed still has your name on it. Nothing about your waiting disqualified you from what was already yours." Say it one more time with me. I am not waiting on rescue. I already carry what I need. It is already inside me. And that is the whole quiet truth underneath everything Kenyon ever taught. Nobody is coming to save you, but something inside you already can, and it has been able this entire time.